Welcome to another episode of First Light, where we dive deep into personal stories of transformation and leadership. I'm your host, Chris Keller, and today I'm excited to have a very special guest on the show, Eric Chaffin, co-founder and managing partner of Chaffin Luhana. Eric's journey is truly remarkable, starting from humble beginnings in West Virginia to becoming a federal prosecutor and now leading one of the most successful plaintiff-only law firms in the country. His firm's motto is doing good by doing right, and they have recovered over $1 billion for their clients. But beyond the numbers, it's Eric's commitment to empowering the voiceless and fostering a culture of empathy that sets him apart. He's an Ironman all-world athlete, a passionate endurance sports enthusiast, and a leader both in the courtroom and in life. We're going to unpack his story, his leadership philosophy, and how he balances high-stakes legal work with his personal passions. Eric, welcome to First Light. Eric, I want to first start off by thanking you for joining me on First Light. You were a person that immediately, when I heard speak, I was like, man, this guy's amazing. And so I know you've had an incredible journey from growing up in West Virginia, your career as a federal prosecutor, and now as the leader of a major law firm. Can you kind of take us back to the beginning? What experiences shaped your decision to pursue a career in law?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you, Chris, for having me on. I really appreciate the chance to connect with you, and just been watching your journey with Ironman and your firm, and just really excited with things you're doing, and love that you're doing this podcast. You were telling me a little bit about it offline, and really just impressed with just how much you push and grow, and I have a lot of respect for that. So appreciate you having me on. So
thank you.
And yeah, and just for myself, it's I think I've said to people a number of times now that when you think about it, when you're going through things at a younger age, you have a certain way of defining your sort of path and what you're aspiring to. And I think for so many of us, we're so focused on the future and certain breakpoints that we don't really think about where we are in the journey. And so going back and looking at my journey in reverse and then laying a story on it, Ryan Holiday would say that you have to be careful with that because it can really build an ego and a story that you have to live up to. But for me, I think it's just, it's more genuine now than what it had been. And so, I'm someone that came to terms with very young childhood sexual abuse when I was in my mid-40s. And so it's something I knew for myself, but didn't share with anyone else. And so did a lot of my individual work in order to get past a lot of triggers and things that controlled me in life in different ways that I probably didn't understand fully. And now looking back, I mean, that's a lot of what defined my sense of justice and what it is I want to do in terms of helping my clients, and have been helping my clients for a long time to do. And so those early childhood days that were challenging have now, I think, turned into a lot of positive for me and perhaps other people, just the impact that we've been able to have at the firm. So,
well, and so take us through kind of how you've come to terms with some of that, how that's really shaped you. What are the things that you've practiced and done that's made you that strong person that you are today?
Yeah, it's, I think like a lot of people, adversity can really cause you to stop and evaluate things. And for me, it wasn't so much adversity as, I started our firm, Ripple and I did, back in 2010. And by 2015, 16, I was getting to that point where it wasn't a midlife crisis, but certainly where I'm questioning things like, wow, like this doesn't go on forever. There is a point at which you don't have the energy and ability to go forward. I don't know when that is, but there is definitely an end to it. And so it caused me to slow down and say, hold on a second, are you really taking care of yourself? And so I went and started doing meditation. It was actually January 8th, 2015. And that was probably the first step to kind of waking me or opening my eyes to some of the things that were going on for myself. And so through actually learning to sit with myself quietly, I kind of had the space to really have understanding and perspective on some of my subconscious thoughts, and was going through some marriage counseling with my now ex-wife at the time. And, a therapist said to me, she's like, Eric, something's come up that I've seen, and have you talked to anyone about this? And so through her, I found my way to an EMDR expert, which is, really particularized field of study in terms of mental health that EMDR therapy I use a lot with my clients now to help them overcome trauma. But started doing EMDR therapy at one point, and so that was more like the mental health part of it for me. And then of course, there's the other part of it, which is the physical. And I realized that, like, hold on, like, I really could build a life myself at work and the stuff I was doing, but not as much for myself individually with surrounding myself with friends or letting other people in. And so part of what I did was push myself to go do cycling, do running. I got involved in Peloton, and eventually it led me to like Ironman races, for example, which have been really connective for me, even though I'm not racing right now, and but developed a lot of good friendships from it.
So let's talk about the meditation. So one of the things that I've talked about a lot in my journey and what really kind of transformed my life was The Power of the Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod, and the 5 a.m. Club, those types of books. And so for me, getting up that extra hour early, having that opportunity to sit in silence, start meditating. Then I added the physical component as well, and started going out for runs, and that led me to half Ironmans as well. So talk about that transformation for you, and how you were able to take meditation, sitting in silence, and really change your life.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think that so much of what we do and how we try to grow is so focused on movement, and but it's not always the right movement. And it's interesting, as you just said, sitting in silence is a beginning point for different types of movement. And so I think each of us have similar journeys in that respect, and I think that's absolutely true. Like, you have to slow down in order to speed up. And I can see just some of the things you're doing with your life individually, but then also with your firm and how much you've grown. It really is amazing once you get really connected with yourself and develop those, what some people would just say, well, those healthy habits, but they're a healthy way of life that really just breeds other confidence and strength and resilience in other areas as well, which I think allows us to achieve a lot more, which is exciting.
We'll talk about how, for me, transforming myself personally, have that self-reflective, what it's done for my business. And, one thing with racing is having that discipline, having that consistency to get up every day and go for that run, to go for that long bike ride. With what you've done, you spent hours and hours on the bike. You've spent hours out running. It's grueling. So talk about how that's helped you to build this amazing law firm that you have now.
Yeah, it's hard to. It's kind of like doing marketing versus branding. If you do branding, you might look and say, well, what channel is producing what result for me? And it's hard to put your fingers on it. And I think it's similar with Ironman. It's, on some level, like my law partner might say to me at some point, like, you're spending so much time on the bike or running, or my family would at different times. And what you realize, though, is it's just making me a better person, more effective. And so, certainly clarity of thought. I think, as it's that perseverance, and I know you've done a half, you're going to be doing the full next, and the sort of the volume increases, but then also the suffering does too, right? And so it can be grueling, and so then you realize, like, hold on a second, like, I got through this, I certainly can get through something mentally challenging in terms of business or pressure points that we have. And business and Ironmans are very similar in that unexpected things happen, right? And so being able to stand with that in confidence, and talking to our teams and explaining to them, like, hey, this is an inflection point. Yes, it's challenging being vulnerable, but we'll get through this. It's it's something, I think it makes us a better leader. I mean, just so many different things. I think it really adds to who we are as people. And can't say enough about Ironman. I'm so excited for you with your journey. So,
one of your guiding principles at your firm, and I love the video that you guys have, is doing good by doing right. Talk about the evolution of your company and really how you got to the point of having this strong guiding principle of doing good, doing right.
Yeah. So that principle, or our ethos, is what we refer to it as now. When we started our firm back in 2010, we had come from a couple of firms where, some really good attorneys, and just the core values weren't aligned necessarily with where we were. And so having an ethos or a core value was really important to us. And, sort of the word genesis of it was, I was given a plaque as I was leaving Reed Smith back in, 1999 to go to the U.S. Attorney's Office. But there's a saying, it's actually a Jewish proverb. I'm not Jewish, but a friend of mine who was a mentor of mine. And the proverb is, justice, justice shall you seek. And generally that phrase or term is you can't go and be a prosecutor and obtain justice without doing justice in the process. And so it's similar to the way I think of life, or how Rupal does as well. And so how can you seek righteousness or justice for people if you're not just in the process? And so it's almost like a Zen way of approaching things. And on one level, and so doing good by doing right, or you'll see different people say, well, you can do well by doing good. There's different ways that people put a spin on that, but I think ours is pretty unique. It's actually, we trademark it. We try not to have other people using it. Some people try to at times, and but I think the big thing for us is that that's one aspect of it. And then if you take the extreme of it, it's almost daunting, because if you say doing good by doing right every day and everything I do or we do, man, that's a hard standard to live up to, because we are human. We are imperfect. And so the interesting thing is I know you do some work with CRISP, and so Rupal and I have each learned that our prints, mine is an 8-1, and so the 1 is perfect, correct, and right, and Rupal's is a 1-8, which is perfect, correct, and right. And so once we saw that, and we saw like what our motto is and the standard that we set, we're like, wow, like we really like push ourselves, but also push the team, and certainly hire people to push us back. And so there's a perfectionism element to it that I think today, this many years into our firm, we realize like, yeah, we are human though. And so it's definitely aspirational, but at the same time, it's a core part of our culture. And it's really, as I say, I teach intensives at CRISP, I say it's kind of how shit gets done around our firm. It's the standard that people push to and strive to for our clients.
Well, and talk about that, because one of the hard parts, I think, as a business owner or a leader, is you come up with this motto, this guiding principle for your firm. And I don't know how many employees you guys have now, but I know it's a lot. You're around 100 or so, right, or more.
Yeah.
How do you get that to really go through your organization and really have everybody in your organization living by that?
Yeah. It's a good question. It's one that we consider and certainly talk about still. And I think there's two challenges for us. One is sheer size. And so we're at about 100. We'll be probably 115 by year end, somewhere around that. And so, of course, talking with Chris, for example, I think one of the first times I saw the communication paradigm, right? How many modes of communication there are, channels of communication among people, and how they exponentially increase, which is a challenge in and of itself. I think the second part for us is we're pretty diversely located geographically. And so, we have offices in Pennsylvania, New York, now in Connecticut. We have people remote. We have paralegals since the pandemic and attorneys that we've hired remote across the country, because our view and philosophy now is we want the best talent. It doesn't matter to us where they are necessarily, because frankly, 98% of our clients communicate with us, probably like you, is through Zoom or other means. And we're used to that, have been for a while because of mass tourists and doing MDL work. But and so I think the challenge is twofold. It's one is the number of people, and second, the geographic location. And so a lot of technology, probably similar to you. I don't know if you guys use Bonusly. We use Slack. We have team leads that we work with. We have EOS we run on. So we have L10 management meetings at different levels throughout the organization. I think now pretty much everyone across the firm participates in L10 at some point, typically on a weekly basis. So they're similar to stand-ups. We have a Jumbotron that we push out that shows the metrics in terms of where the firm is, as well as reinforces different wins based on the core values that we have. Our core values are hashtagged in the Bonusly. There's just a lot of things like that. And because we don't necessarily have, the down the hallway communication at the water cooler examples. And so we try to broadcast those in different ways and have people give the values to each other, which creates the connection versus us, preaching them. And which we both know isn't as effective. We have to lead by example, but to say the words isn't as effective from us. But if we can show by example or have others show example of others within the team, that seems to work much more effectively for us and helps the culture.
Well, one of the biggest things I learned from you in the intensive that I went to was the hiring funnel. Our firm recently put in place a hiring funnel. But I loved the message that the kind of the steps that you make your potential hires go through, and specifically the message that you recorded for them to listen to, and making sure that they want to work with these types of fanatics like you guys. So talk about how the hiring decision has really affected your ability to grow your firm in such a positive, good way.
Yeah, well, first, Chris, I'm so happy to hear you guys are doing it too. I know you've grown so many by so many people, and probably like you, it's yeah, we grew from a similar size when we started working with Chris, but I think is what you are, and it's one of those things where you hire people and you don't get the hires rate, so it gets so frustrating because you invest so much time and expense in training them, and so it's I wish I could say like since day one we started doing that. Before we met Chris, I actually had done some work trying to figure out the right questions to ask during interviews because I felt like it wasn't effective. And so I came up with some high growth mindset questions that really boded well with even what Chris was doing. And so the funnel, of course, is not mine. It's what Jess Mogul and others developed at Crisp. And it's really effective. Obviously, as you're seeing, it's challenging. It can be daunting. And so I've gone from myself doing it to teaching others to do it to now people I've taught are now teaching others to do it. We have a full-time recruiter in house that works the funnel, and funnel always to me, probably the same for you, is it always seems more sanitary because it's like literally putting people through a funnel, right? It's so it doesn't seem warm and connective, and that's something we've talked about. I know at the Intensives we talk about, we have human connection. Where is that human connection? Because it can be through videos and tests that we're doing for candidates, but ultimately we're trying to figure out ways to validate, I think, those human beings, those people that we're working with. And I think our firm, like a lot of firms, we have our ethos, doing good by doing right, but most of us are looking for caring and compassionate people with our clients, but then they're also high growth mindset individuals. And so it's kind of like if you and I said like, well, show me people who do Ironmans, but they're also compassionate, empathetic. A lot of them aren't. They're just all about themselves driving forward and they're in their own race. But then you see the caring and compassionate people out on the course because they care for one another. They're talking through different things together on the course to entertain ourselves or each other or being kind in different ways. And so it's there's a lot of analogies, I think, in terms of how we're hiring people or the people we're recruiting for our respective businesses. And I think that's really the great thing about the hiring funnel is it gives us that ability to validate some of these things, but then also really focus in on what we're after and be able to communicate that to our team members who are doing interviews and being able to have subsequent conversations with them about what is this a quality candidate and why is it a quality candidate versus just they were good, oh yeah, they were not a bad person. Like, no, that's not helpful. Let's get specific. And that to me was the exciting thing about the funnel and has been for us in terms of growing and been fortunate enough to grow our team quite a bit from it. So.
Yeah, it's truly amazing. I know you hit on this word in that answer. You talked about empathy, and I know that you've mentioned, in the past that empathy is kind of the secret weapon of great trial attorneys, but also probably that of exceptional leaders and business owners. Can you talk about how empathy plays a role in your legal work and your approach?
Yeah, I have to say it's empathy is such a challenge for so many of us. And when you say that, like, hold on a second, aren't you? Isn't everybody? And you could go to extreme examples of people that are just complete narcissists, so they don't have the ability to step out of themselves and hear things or see things from someone else's perspective. And so I find that as, we grow older, I said the other day to somebody, like, it's so interesting. Like when I was younger and I was quiet, I was bashful. Now, if I'm older and I'm quiet, I'm wise. Like nothing's changed. I mean, like it has changed, but like from just the mannerism has not changed from young to old. It's just what people perceive and what they bring to it. And, but empathy for me, it's something that I probably struggled with when I was younger because just by nature, but it's certainly part of something that just part of who I am or interest I have. And I say that because like I've studied Imago relationship therapy, for example, and it's something that I've studied with my ex-wife. I'm currently engaged and I spent a lot of time with my fiance. We spent time, she's working on her master's at Columbia in counseling. We just did a psychodrama workshop last week with a client for 2 days. I learned psychodrama through Rick Friedman up at Ethos in Washington State, who wrote Rules of the Road. And Rick's a brilliant attorney. And his wife actually is a psychodramatist that was taught by a woman out of New York, Louise Lipman, who I did the psychodrama with last week. But I say all this because it doesn't start and stop with the use of the word empathy. It's actually being a student of listening, understanding, and connection with people. and then trying to foster that genuine connection. And, we have so many things that rob us from being present, right? So many demands in our lives. And so I think that's the hard thing at times in life is people have so many demands. And so, if you've seen the intensive, we've talked about, like Tony Robbins talking about the 6 basic human needs, and some of those basic human needs and taking care of them for ourselves. So then we can be present and have growth and contribution. And I think a big part of growth and contribution is that empathy. And so it's, I spent a lot of time, and I will spend the rest of my life still trying to understand empathy and owning it and, participating in it. And, at the ranch, I was saying that before we started, I traveled this summer and had a great trip to England and Greece with the family. But before that, I spent 3 weeks in Wyoming on the Jerry Spence Ranch and studying the method. And it was the 30th anniversary of the trial school there. And Jerry came back for a couple of days to spend time with people and on the ranch. And it's probably his last trip to the ranch. And, there was some incredible moments getting to see him do a voir dire or hold counsel around a breakfast table or lunch table. And he has just such a quick way of connecting with people and understanding who they are. And, looking at someone and saying, man, your smile, like I saw him with one gentleman, is just like, your smile. He's like, you just must open hearts with that smile. And like, the person can't help but respond. Right. And so it's fascinating to watch. And so, to me, I say to people all the time, like empathy is first being a student of empathy and understanding and connection with others. And it's, and then figuring out for yourself, like what keeps you from that if you feel like you're not getting it, and then trying to work on that for ourselves. Like, what is it that prevents me from being present? Is it an intrusive thought about something else? Is it a trigger about something that you haven't processed for ourselves? And so that's the way I think about it, to be honest with you. So,
one thing that's really, touching on me in this conversation is all the professional growth that you're still doing. I look at you as someone who's achieved so much and done so much already. But yeah, here you are 3 weeks in Wyoming at the trial school. One of my attorneys did it and just talked about what an amazing experience and life-changing experience was for him as a trial attorney. And these different seminars that you're going to. So talk about that, the importance there of that personal and professional growth that you're still experiencing, even though you've accomplished from an outsider looking in, so much, that I look up to.
Yeah. Well, you're really kind. It's what most people say is, you stop learning, then there's something wrong, in my opinion. Right. And look at yourself. You've got your goals with Chattanooga next year. You've got your plan set out in terms of where you're going. And that journey is an incredible one. It takes a lot of hours and commitment in order to get there. And so it's, I'm sure you're listening to podcasts or doing different things on the bike or things you're doing. And so you're constantly learning too. And I feel blessed at my age. I just turned 53 and I feel blessed that I have the ability to say like, hey, I go spend 3 weeks at the ranch and study this technique and really learn a lot more about life. And I think that's part of the benefit of all the hard work that we've done and that you're doing is we get to do those things and control our own destiny that way. So it just builds on itself, which is exciting. So.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about, your experience as an Ironman athlete, as a marathon finisher. Can you talk about how that has affected you and impacted you in your leadership style and in your approach to being a business leader?
Yeah, I think it's maybe more patient. It's something else that we talked about even before we started today is just, we think that we have to have all the answers and, we don't, and that's okay. And so oftentimes in Ironman or a marathon, like there's things going on with your body where something happens in the race you have no control over, and you can seek to understand it. You may not get answers, but through seeking to understand it, you come to terms with it. And so, it's just, I think just patience and, again, just better listening skills. I think that's part of it. I think the other part of it is we both know, like someone will say, like, how do you do an Ironman? You start putting one foot in front of the other. You just start moving. And it's so hard when you do, because you're going like, hold on a second. I can barely swim the length of a, 25-yard pool, much less get in, a multiple mile swim. But again, it's just, you just keep moving and you do get there, even though you have this disbelief often during the process. And so I think with business, it's very similar at times. Is you have this lofty goal or something you're driving towards, and the team's definitely not going to see it. You as a visionary are supposed to see it, and you do. You can lose sight of it, so you reconnect with it. But it's really just focusing on those 1% difference issues that you're controlling on a daily basis, and eventually you get there. And so there's, as you know, I mean, there's so many metaphors, right, in terms of business to these things, but certainly it's been so helpful, definitely. So
you were talking earlier about all the different demands that are on your time, and as a leader of a company, whether it's a law firm or any other company, with family, I know you have kids, been married, and then training for marathons and Ironman. Talk about how you really, and I don't like to call it a balance because it's tough, but how do you go about handling all those demands on your time?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you probably have people say this to you. They'll say, "Oh, you do an Ironman? Oh, wow, must be nice to have that time to spend doing biking or running. Like, I'd never have that kind of time." And so I think the first step is to not tell yourself a story about how important you are or what limitations you have, but then look at it and say, well, am I going to make a commitment to not have a bottle of wine with some friends on a Friday night, and then Saturday morning I'm going to get up, I'm going to cycle and spend time with people that are doing similar things. And it's going to feel uncomfortable at first because the conversations will be different. It may be tired and not as focused as I want to be. There's a lot of challenges to it, but it's really like opening yourself up to the possibility, I think is a big part of it. And so, yeah, so I don't know if it answers your question, but yeah. So,
yeah, no, for me, it's that we talked about kind of early morning routine and getting myself into a routine, creating that discipline in my life. For me, I gave up alcohol and haven't had a drink in 18 months, and that was a hard thing to have to give up. But training for these endurance events was one of the ways I was able to kind of to get past that. One thing in your firm that that really impressed me as well is the way that your firm really gives back to the community and how deeply you involved you in the community. Can you talk about the importance of that community involvement for you personally and for your law firm?
Yeah, it's so I think a feeling we can all relate to is wanting to make a difference for others. And so I remember being in high school, and my brother witnessed a friend of his getting killed in a car crash. And I walked up on the crash when the young man was killed. I'm still friends with his sister on Facebook, and she'll post about his death each year. And I just really feel for that family. And I remember there were other kids involved in that crash. And I remember talking to other kids, trying to marshal a movement to have conversations and start something in the school around the deaths which happened around big football games or graduations, which is what this was around. And so it was really tragic. It was very hard on the community. And so that's probably the earliest moment in my life where I could connect a feeling with wanting to make a difference in the community. And so I did that in college. And then, of course, some on the defense side, I was at Reed Smith by working on death row cases. And then ultimately, when we started our firm, like, we want to have impact, not just for our team, our clients, but then in the communities themselves. And it's partly because of this feeling, which I think is a feeling we all share, like how much good we feel inside by helping others, particularly in the community. And, I think you and I both could say that, like, if you've done these events, the teams have so much excitement of just giving to people who have no expectation. And, and our clients, God bless them, like, we help them, but of course they've contracted with us to do the work, and they're paying us ultimately to do the work. And so there is some expectation, rightly so, but to really truly just give something away without anyone having an expectation on you is really a gift. And so I think that's a big motivational thing for us, that feeling within the firm. It's something that's in common. It's something we share. It's something we screen for in empathy of people. And so, like our turkey giveaways, or probably the one that hit home most for me was doing the 10,000 sandwiches giveaway during the pandemic. It's, someone will ask me about it, and I still think of the sizzle video and just the feeling I get, that goodness of just seeing how many people were impacted. And that feeling of hope that people had is something that I relate to from, living through 9/11 as a prosecutor and working on, the investigation there. Like, just all these different points, when I think about it, it's truly a feeling is what it is. And it's what motivates people to make a difference. And it's hopefully what we can tap into with jurors. And and we tap into for our teams that feeling of hope and helping. So,
yeah, can we talk about that for a moment? You talked about your time as a federal prosecutor. Can you talk about some of your significant wins or some of your significant losses that taught you the most from your time of being a federal prosecutor?
Yeah, it's as a federal prosecutor, I mean, I was only there for 4 years. Seemed like a long time years ago. Now, in the course of a 30-year career, it doesn't seem like so long. But I think the wins for myself there were, a lot of drug crimes, which I feel like now looking back weren't such wins. I wish I could have made a difference by helping some of the people I work with versus just putting them in jail. Although I do think that, some of them are the worst. Some bigger cases I think were cases I helped families get closure on. So I had one case where a drug dealer was in Florida and cut a body up with a chainsaw and wrapped it in plastic and took it out and burned the body in the Everglades. And so the family never knew what happened to their son. And eventually this guy became a cooperator with our office. So he's a cooperating witness. And imagine how bad the guys were going after that he was actually cooperating with us, right? And so part of our work as prosecutors was to corroborate what a cooperating witness is telling us, because you have to substantiate they're telling the truth. That's what you want to show a jury if you're prosecuting someone in an organization above them. And so that's what we were doing. And so part of what we wanted to do was prove out what happened with this drug-related homicide that he had committed. And so we actually found the detectives who did the investigation, and we actually got closure for the family there. And as tragic as the circumstance was, it led to a lot of their prosecutions as well. And also, like I said, gave the family closure. So those types of cases were really meaningful to me because, again, if you've ever seen someone lose a son or a daughter, and I've seen it many times, including my own grandfather with my dad, it's just there's just such heartache in and of itself. But then to not have answers about how they were lost or how they were gone, I think it's some of the most tragic things we see of other humans. And that's just sad. And so in terms of quote unquote wins, that probably would be, the most meaningful. So back then.
And what about in the private practice? What, cases have really left a lasting impact on you and shaped you as an attorney, you as a leader, and as a business owner?
Yeah. I think we learned, at least for me, it's kind of cliche, but I learned the most from my losses. I think that's something that's, true. And, we've had some big losses. So the denture adhesive litigation, we litigated for a long time against 2 different companies. We were tremendously successful against one that had double the amount of active poison ingredient, for lack of a better word right now. The active ingredient that was at issue was twice as much in one product as the other. And so the one with the lesser amount of the thing that was causing the harm, I'm being vague because I don't want to name the companies, but essentially the lesser of the two, we end up getting some settlements with, but ultimately we were on eve of trial multiple times and didn't make it there because of the courts ruling against us on science. And it's science that behind closed doors in different settings, everyone believed in, including the companies themselves, but we didn't get there off the courts. And so I think that's only gotten worse in the past 12, 13 years since those decisions were handed down, which were a loss for us. And we're seeing it now across the country. I think a lot of the Trump appointees, in terms of the appointments that have happened, the effect that's happening in terms of the courts, companies are getting wiser and they're more afraid of the science because science is becoming more developed. And I can imagine the next 3 to 5 years between quantum computing as well as AI, that we're going to have so much more knowledge even then as we do now. And I think our ability to prove things is going to be greater. And so I'm excited about the turning of the tables, so to speak, in terms of what's happening. But I think the defendants all see this coming and know it. And so they're trying to get the courts to apply a more stringent standard, which is happening. And by nature, it's happening across the country. And I think that's a challenge for us. And so biggest losses is probably that denture adhesive litigation. We also were very heavily involved in Zantac, which we had an adverse ruling in Florida, which is up on appeal. And that's tough because I truly believe there are thousands of men and women who have been developed cancer because of that product, and that's really unfortunate. And so the losses are just a large magnitude because the sheer number of people that are affected. And that's the plus side of an MDL, that a lot of the work we do is you get to help a lot of people, but it also, when you lose, you see the impact on a large number of people, which is unfortunate.
One thing I wanted to talk to you about and touch on as well is the impact of business coaching on you personally, and then obviously now you find yourself helping other people like me and somebody I look up to you. So talk to us a little bit about that progression for you, as allowing business coaching into your business, and then ultimately giving back and helping young or even older business owners like myself to really grow as well.
Yeah, no, it's first of all, you're giving me too many accolades for sure, and you're really kind. I appreciate that. But I think it's in terms of getting coaching, it's that mindset that we talked about a few minutes ago, which is being open to learning and realizing that if you're in the room and you're the person who knows the most, you're not necessarily growing. And so you got to be open to learning things from peers and other people. And so even like on the Spence Ranch, being there were much younger attorneys, and some just a year or two out of law school that haven't learned the bad habits we have as attorneys every year, and just can be really so genuine, authentic. And so I just find I can learn something from everybody. And and certainly on the business coaching side, I was always into like motivational, positive speaking in some way. And so when I saw Michael Mogul on stage, some people were turned off by Michael and his sort of sales approach at the summits, I should say. And so when I saw him back in like 2018, 19, I was more like, wow, this is really different. It's unique. And so when they started offering coaching and Chris Beck's, we were one of the original members. And so we really, I think, let a lot in. And so through the pandemic, there were challenges in terms of business and personally. And because of that coaching, I think it really helped me get through a lot of that. It was very positive. And so I can't say enough about it. I know you speak highly of the Chris coaching and the atmosphere, and I certainly do as well. And it's been really they're really kind. I think they recognize that we have something as a firm to offer. So I've taught intensives with them. Rupal's teaching vision now at one of the intensives with them, and it's nice to give back, and the connections. I mean, just connections with you and others through this process has been really wonderful. And so it's part of being around guys like you. I still get to grow, which I appreciate. So
thank you. I appreciate that. Lastly, leave us with those words of wisdom. What, for the listeners out there that are listening, and they're in all, walks of life, all stages of life, what's that words of wisdom that you leave us with? Those parting words.
Yeah, I'll tell you this way. So I use this analogy. So my dad died at 54 from lung cancer. He was a smoker, but also a steel worker, and so he was exposed to asbestos. And so the pulmonologist ultimately determined it was a synergistic effect between the two that caused his death. And I say that in a blunt way because it's just not emotional. That's what happened to my dad. And my dad though was young, and he hadn't done or had an opportunity to really get his basic human needs met in a lot of ways in his life, such that he didn't have the ability to do his own work and do self work. And so he had to focus on income and health insurance and different things that are basic human needs that so many of our clients face and deal with. And so if you're fortunate enough to have a church or something you're involved in, there's so many outlets spiritually in order to do that self-work on reflective listening and sermons and different things. Then of course, if you are fortunate enough to get those really basic human needs met, then of course you can do even deeper work perhaps, or different kind of work, and for yourself. And so my thing is, like, when my dad was dying and he was sick, I tried to connect with him emotionally. And he literally said to me, and it's, it wasn't malicious, it was just where he was, which is, don't give me that emotional bullshit. And so part of my journey has been, hold on, when my kids, if God bless me that if I'm able to say goodbye to my kids, I would never want to say that to them, but instead to be able to be there for them and to love them the way that I wish I could have been loved, right? And so that doesn't happen unless I do my own work. And so we see so much generational trauma handed down from one generation to the next. And so it's all within us to actually work through our issues or challenges. And some things are really simple, like a MAGA relationship therapy would say, like, we all have these ruptures we deal with. And so even with our spouses, there may be a power struggle that we don't understand, but we can understand it through that self-work. And so again, just, I think the simple way of saying it is do the work, like do the work for yourself and don't be afraid of it, because if you're afraid of it for yourself, then, think about how much more rich your life could be if you actually do those things, I guess is the way I would look at it. So, right.
No, I appreciate it. And, that's going to be a motto for me now is do the work. I can't think of anything better than just do the work, show up every day and give it your best. So again, Eric, I can't thank you enough for taking your time, making time for me and to appear on First Light. So thank you so much for sharing your inspiring journey. I know that your story inspires me. Your leadership inspires me to be better every day. So I'm going to do the work.
Yeah. Appreciate you inviting me on and creating this platform for everybody and allow me to be a part of the journey. So thank you.
All right. Thank you. Hey, Eric, it's good to spend some time with you. I could spend, so much time with you. I mean, I just feel like every time I'm in your presence, I learn so much. So hopefully we can stay connected. And I know we've sent some cases your way and you've sent some cases back. So I appreciate that so much as well. Being able to work with your firm has been an amazing thing for us. So I really appreciate it.
Same here. Yeah. Appreciate it, man. All right. Be well.
All right. Thanks, Eric. That brings us to the end of this powerful conversation with Eric Chaffin. I hope his story of grit, resilience, and commitment to justice has inspired you as much as it has inspired me. Eric's approach to leadership, building a firm culture, and doing good by doing right offers lessons for anyone looking to make an impact in their work and community. Be sure to check out Chaffin & His work and follow Eric's journey. As always, if you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Until next time, keep shining your light.